Hello, my name is William James. Welcome back to the Bald Book Geek. So this video started out completely different idea and kind of morphed into this, and I decided to pick 3 classic science fiction novels that you need to read, that I think everyone should at least try. They're very different, and I've picked them for very specific reasons. So here we go. First, a word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by Wilbur Seymour and his fantastic science fiction series, Kyber Station. Right now they're exclusively available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. All the links and info you need below. Do check out his fantastic series. The first book on this list that I picked was H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. This is a beautifully written classic novel, and it's definitely the softer side of science fiction. It's one of those books that kind of lingers in the memory, and it's been referenced countless times. You meet a time traveller who you never learn his name, but you have the story framed in the present day, Victorian England, then present day, and it recounts the events of an otherwise anonymous time traveller's journal in the far future. It's also a work of future history and speculative fiction and speculative evolution. Just absolutely fascinating and brilliantly written book. You jump forward, ahead to different points in time, and you eventually go until the far future, after mankind is split into 2 species, the Murlocs and the Eloi. But everything in between that is also equally as stunning. Destruction of other things, the kind of rebuilding of the world, an ancient war. And you have just this sort of beautifully written and fascinating novel. The end, and this is kind of a spoiler, but I think it's an important one. It's also part of the Dying Earth subgenre. A portion of the novel sees the time traveller in a distant future, and the sun is huge and red, and effectively the Earth is dying, the sun is dying, and you see what's happened. He returns to his own time and gets in the time machine, but he never returns. This is one of those books that I remember being forced to read in school, and I hated it. But I loved it as an adult. And I also will say that there's a deleted text, which is also fascinating, where you see a different ending and a slightly more encounter at the end of the book, The Dying Earth. And the distant future, the frost-covered moorlands with simple grasses and black bushes, populated with furry, hopping herbivores, very similar to kangaroos, and he realises they are probably descendants of humans, Eloi, Murloc. It's an absolutely beautiful and spectacular novel, and one that not enough people, I think, give much time of day, especially now with sort of the push against classics. Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is a book that is definitely a classic. It's a phenomenal read, and it's a lot of sarcasm, and I don't know how well that translates to American readers, because it is fundamentally very British. It's funny. It's genuinely funny, and the novel, it also deals with all the British dark humour. So you end up with a character, the main character, Arthur. He awakes in his home in the West Country, England, and discovers that his local planning council are trying to demolish his house to build a bypass. And he lies in front of a bulldozer to stop it. Then you realise the Earth is going to be destroyed for a galactic bypass. And you sort of see the echoes of modern society in this novel. It's just one of those. You have this great little story, a depressed robot named Marvin, who is just brilliantly funny, and there's been film and television adaptations and audio dramas of this. It's very accessible and very easy to read, and people don't realise that. And it's just funny. And I mean that. It's genuinely funny, but it also asks a lot of questions. It's a satirical look at modern life and characters and people. I mean, there's a whole planet that is basically a population of civil servants. And it's funny. You just end up going into this book, and I couldn't put it down. I've read this countless times. I've read the entire series. There has been countless film adaptations. There's been a cinema adaptation, and there is also a sort of a state-approved sequel called Another Thing, which is also very good and definitely captures the Adams spirit. This book is just one of those. If you've not read Hitchhikers and you call yourself a science fiction fan, come on, pick up Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy today. Dune by Frank Herbert. Dune is to science fiction and science fantasy and space operas what Lord of the Rings is to fantasy. It sets so much up, and I think I said this in another video, that without Dune you wouldn't have the science fiction. And to be real about it, Dune as a novel, it came out in 1965, is beautiful. It's big. Yes, it can be a little dry in places, but actually the world building is important, and sort of the interpolitical relationships of these characters, as well as the eventual jihad and the history of the Dune universe set in the far future, long after mankind has left Earth. You're not going to find aliens in this novel. You're not going to find creatures from other worlds. It's very human, and it is a landmark piece of science fiction, and you could access the politics of humanity rather than the future of human technology. And I think that's an absolutely fantastic way to describe it. You have there are 6 books in the Dune saga, and the first 3 are my favourite, but I do love the latter books. And actually, I think there's 7, Sandworms of Doom. But yes, just an absolutely fantastic series, and there is countless other books set within this series, in this universe, which are all worth picking up and all enjoying. But Dune is the landmark of science fiction. Without Dune, half of the stuff we read probably wouldn't exist. I mean, there was even a court case between Dune and George Lucas, so make that what you will. Dune shaped Star Wars. It shaped everything, and Star Wars borrowed extremely heavily from Dune. And I hate to tell people that, but it's true. Without Dune, there wouldn't have been Star Wars. Although Star Wars went in the arthurial legend direction, where Dune stayed on the social, economic, political side. Dune is the landmark science fiction novel that everyone needs to at least try once.